You go over here somewhere. There's a hut and it has 4 chests in it.
Okay, we're live.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Kevin just jumped on as we went live. How are you doing, Kev?
Good.
Perfect timing as always, Kev.
Yeah. I couldn't, for some reason, connect with you guys. So
Okay.
For our pre-show, go ahead, Russ.
All right. This pre-show gives me great cheer and joy because the pride of Long Island, the pride of Hicksville, New York, which was just a couple of towns over from me, Billy Joel, the piano man. I don't think Springsteen even has a moniker, but Billy Joel is the piano man. He is known as that.
Billy Joel is the boss, by the way.
Shush.
Yeah.
He's getting his own bobblehead from the New York Islanders. It's fantastic. It's well deserved. And Springsteen ain't got no NHL bobblehead.
he does have a moniker, though. I can't believe you said that.
The boss.
The boss. I know. I forgot for a second.
There's absolutely, we can't get into this debate again.
Yeah, they're gonna have a bobblehead of Springsteen with a shovel in his hand digging a ditch in New Jersey.
I would rather watch. Oh yeah.
This isn't about watching that. This is bobblehead immortality, and Springsteen doesn't have that at the moment in that sport. Billy Joel now does.
Right now he does, but
That's what it's about. It's about because look, the Coliseum's opening back up to the Islanders. Billy Joel has played there like a million times.
oh yeah, no, Billy Joel. Listen, Nassau Coliseum and Billy Joel. There's no two ways about it, right? That's like
And
that's like,
MSG.
Well, MSG is pretty much a split until Billy Joel signed that deal with Dolan. Then he went way ahead of Springsteen. But to be honest, it was pretty much a split all the years.
Yeah, from what I heard,
Billy Joel has always been the same thing. Okay, my issue with Billy Joel is he hasn't written any music forever. Like
he
literally,
doesn't have to.
he does have to. You're an artist.
No. Act. This is the thing. If you put it side by side with, and even Springsteen aficionados say this, if you put it side by side with some of the crap that Springsteen has written over the last 15 years, he's had a couple good songs, but nothing like The River, nothing like Born in the USA, nothing like Nebraska, nothing like the stuff in his prime. It's
They're all better
so what?
than no songs that Billy Joel ever written.
No, they're not.
Just so you know, I don't know if you know this, Ek, but in 2013, Billy Joel put out like some piano concertos, and he has been doing some of those throughout the years. It's just he's not doing pop music.
Yeah, and I got to say that moments ago, I'm sure there was a hit put out on Mike referring to Springsteen music as crap.
There might be. I would never.
Do you see the red dot?
Okay, as a musician, and I'll do this, we'll just do this real fast because it's pointless, but I'll do it again because everyone's not always watching all the time. As a musician, I must say that simply watching these, I saw both of these acts and Paul McCartney 2 years ago, like within the same month. Okay, and Paul McCartney was great. Obviously he's Paul McCartney. He's allowed to be Paul McCartney. He's a Beatle. He still writes music too. He still puts songs out. They're not awesome, but some of them are pretty good. Anyway, but seeing the band, the difference in the bands, okay, just the players who are playing with them.
Forget the band. Just go one-on-one here.
No, but even one-on-one, even the ability. I mean, but when you go to a concert for Billy Joel, you might as well be going to like the Piano Man, show put on by some guys who look like Billy Joel and his band. Like you might as well, that's what you're going to.
Paul McCartney post Beatles, his most success was with Wings.
Right.
The band that he's touring with and the band that he's toured with like the last decade, none of the members of Wings are in that band. It doesn't really matter. I mean,
when you're a musician and you're playing with Paul McCartney, they're interested in being there. Like there's no question. The Billy Joel band is not interested in being there. Like I saw, I was 5 feet away from them. They were so friggin' bored. It was like seeing Journey at the Borgata a few years ago. They were not interested in being there.
All right, here's the last thing I'll say on this.
Yes.
A few years ago, I had a chance to cover a Springsteen concert. I've seen him about 4 times. But I had a chance to cover one, and when I got there, it was him by himself, all by his lonesome, and I had like 4th row seats. He was playing interludes to songs. Now, again, he's gotten a lot better on the guitar, so I had to write that, and I was impressed with that. But Billy Joel compared to him.
Well, you went to what tour was that? Like that was the Tom Joad tour or something like that?
No, it was not Tom Joad. It was after that.
It wasn't a straight up Springsteen concert.
It was Bruce Springsteen on his own, playing his own hits.
On his own. You see, you got to see Bruce Springsteen.
Let me finish.
That's different.
finish. Thank you. So he was playing interludes to like Thunder Road, and people had no idea what they were listening to. 30 seconds, a minute and a half into it, until he finally would say the words. Right. I'm just telling you, at the end of the day, and while Springsteen has gotten to be a better guitar player, Billy Joel's a piano player, is still stellar, and he's a better singer. So if you want to say Springsteen writes better songs these days, I don't care.
Okay, so and I'll throw one more thing in there, but it's ridiculous. Okay, so the other person I saw who's old like that and really crazy was Elton John recently, right? Mm-hmm. And I told you this before, that Elton John I thought would be completely cheesy. Like, I was given the tickets, I thought this will be completely like, this will be, because I've seen Elton John when I was a kid. I saw Elton John when he was old then. But Elton John and his band, which is like his original band, which is amazing, was awesome. Like Elton John,
it's his farewell tour.
But he was
because he's done.
It's going on for 5 years, his farewell tour. Okay, but anyway, I'm just saying that's a hell of a farewell tour. But anyway, he's amazing, and so he's up there with Springsteen, still performing actually as they are, where Billy Joel and even Paul McCartney are kind of karaokeing themselves.
But right now, Billy Joel won, Springsteen nothing, in bobbleheads. Game over.
That's all we're getting.
Let's start the show.
Springsteen's not a hockey guy. I'll tell you that. I know that. I've talked to people about that.
Who's a hockey guy? And his favorite team is the Flyers. Trey Anastasio, a Fish. Good New Jersey.
Yes, I did know that. I've seen him in.
And he played in a Flyers charity game around Christmas 1996, and he was wearing a Flyers jersey at the old Wachovia. Was that what it was?
Yeah,
Wachovia.
Yeah.
Thanks to Springsteen's drummer as a season ticket holder at the Devils. I'm pretty
sure. I didn't know. That's interesting.
I've seen Max Weinberg at Stanley Cups.
Yeah.
I've seen him like before the game. I've seen Max Weinberg, and Trey Anastasio was in the locker room for the Flyers when he was touching the Prince of Wales jersey and taking a picture of it with his dad. It was kind of cool.
That's cool.
Yeah. Weinberg read a couple of my books.
That's cool.
I know he's a hockey fan. He wrote
a hockey guy. He is.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's amazing. Anyway, Springsteen's not really a sports guy too much. He
loves hot sauce. I can tell you that because I've learned that over the years. Springsteen is a hot sauce connoisseur. One time, remember when the NHL was on break, like one of those lockouts? I was doing a little supermarket work from the back end, and I was in northern Jersey helping out on like a set. And that's where they told me, hey, this is where Springsteen gets his cases of hot sauce from.
That's excellent. I love that. All right, let's start here.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have the order? Do we know what we're doing?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Russ Peter follows me.
Yep, then Russ, then Kevin. Okay, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Friday, November 2nd, 2018.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Peter Tessier.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen, USA Today Sports.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. We had a lot of games last night.
Yep.
I like 13 games. It's kind of crazy that you can't really get your hands around any game. Like, I was trying to watch and then of course you have the late games, the early games.
I watched 3 or 4 of them.
I watched the bits and pieces of each of them. The ones that were interesting to me, and I actually got really intrigued by the Islanders Penguins game, and I tweeted about it a little bit. And the Islanders now, they won home and home. They won home and home against Penguins. They're 5-0 against the Metro Division.
Oh my God.
I think there's something special to this team. Like they remind me so much, because when I fell in love with the Predators as a team to follow them,
mm-hmm.
That was Barry Trotz's, first say 6 or 7 years in Nashville, and this team, the Islanders, remind me so much of those Predators teams. Like there is, they had the Preds, like back then they had I guess they had Arnott, right? Am I thinking Arnott, or was it before Arnott? I'm trying to remember if they had Arnott.
Yeah,
Arnott for a while.
Yeah, and they had, of course, that was the first time through for they had Legwan. Legwan was they had these guys and Hartnell and Timonen and mm-hmm. They really had they were a fun team to watch because because Trotz just had them working so hard that they frustrated the hell out of teams. And that is what the Islanders are. Like, the Islanders are really that kind of a team. I mean, they are so similar. And I mean, for me, who was crushed by the Islanders in 1980 in the Stanley Cup Finals as a child,
Let's not talk about getting crushed by the Islanders. And please stop.
For me to be saying this is something, okay? I think that there's something. I mean, and like I said before, the three teams from the 80s, the Islanders, Oilers, and Canadiens, are all flying right now, and it's fun. It's fun to watch this thing.
I saw that game too, and I come to the same conclusion that I did the day before yesterday. Barry Trotz is doing a great job with their defense, considering they don't have the best personnel. So he's really corralled that and done a nice job with it. The Penguins are dead in the water when their defense is the way it is without Schultz. I'm not even sure, was Letang even in that game? I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. So you lose those two, the Penguins have nothing on defense. It's a miracle they're even in games.
So I thought today what we would do is go through the panel, since we got everybody here, and talk about if the center ice package is on, and just like for a second, assume you don't have an assignment to write for a certain team, you know, which we all do, but in different ways. And who are you watching? Like right now, what are the teams you're trying to watch? Like, what are the teams that you want to see? Like for me, I'm still watching. I'm not really, like last year it was Vegas, right? I'm not really watching Vegas right now. Okay, I guess because they're not that interesting. I'm watching Nashville because Nashville's off to a great start. They're, of course, one of my favorite teams, but I'm watching them anyway because they're still really fun to watch. I'm watching the Islanders, I'm watching the Oilers, and I'm watching the Canadiens. Kevin, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I'm watching the Coyotes, which they're playing maybe the best defensive game in the league right now. They're the lowest goals against average, and I'm kind of intrigued by that team a little bit. I'm curious about it. I'm watching the Predators because they've been really, really good, and I'm watching the Leafs. Like, I'm really fascinated by the Leafs, and even though they're not playing well without Austin Matthews, I continue to be, interested in how they're going to perform, because there's something about that team that I just think they're a good story regardless of what happens to them.
Well, it's funny, Kev, because when Eck asked that question, and I'm covering the Leafs and I'm there all the time, one of the three teams right now, the way they're playing, wouldn't be the Leafs, because recently in their home games, and I said this on Twitter last night, the formula for the Leafs is 57 minutes of frustration and 3 minutes of exaltation. It's again, they don't do much in the first two periods. They haven't scored, I think, in 5 games at home in the first two periods. And then they get behind, and in a couple of the games, the one against Winnipeg when Matthews got hurt, they scored 2 goals late, or a goal early and 2 goals late to win the game. But they seem to think that they can turn it on in the last 5 minutes and win, and they come close. But you have to put more of a 60-minute effort in, and other teams are playing good defensively against them. But they have to fight through that, and they haven't been able to lately.
Let's go back to Arizona for a second, too, because I think that's a really good one to touch base with, if we could. Because Arizona, I agree, they started off 1-4, right? They were struggling. Right. It was like the end of the world was coming. Tockett's got to be gone soon. And now they've got 2 goalies. So, well, I mean, their goalies, I mean, Ront is off the charts, right? I mean, he's playing incredible.
Well, yeah, and what's interesting is, again, I always look at it a little bit differently. Like Mike was talking about the Maple Leafs, he's talking all in terms of, how they're performing. But, I always like the kind of the storylines as well. And what I like about the Coyote situation is not only are they playing the way they did at the end of last season when, down the stretch, they were one of the top teams in the league. Right. Like, they have an incredible record to close the season. But, I'm still fascinated by the whole John Chayka situation.
Yes.
Dubas is the big story this year because he's such a young GM for such a historic franchise in Toronto. But Chayka's still 3 years plus younger than Dubas.
Right.
And he's been in the league 3 years. He's 29 years old and running this team. And he's been a very, very aggressive general manager. If you look at the number, he calls himself transactional. That's how he describes his style. And he really has. I mean, he's made bold trades. Supposedly he was going to have a hard time, sort of fitting with the older generation of general managers. I mean, Lou Lamoriello is 47 years older than Chayka. But he's made big trades. The Galchenyuk and Domi trade, that's a 1950 style of trade. So I'm sort of intrigued by this team that he's put together with one hand tied behind his back because his budget isn't very good. And they've got some good young players. Clayton Keller is a terrific young player. I think Ekman Larson is playing a little bit differently than he has in the past. I think Tocchet has grown as a coach, and I think Ranta is underrated as a goalie. And Chaika said last year when he signed Kemper that he wanted 2 goalies that he could count on, and he really has them. So both of them are playing pretty well. So.
I've been impressed too. I spoke to Chaika a bit last February at the Five Nations, and I saw him interacting with the other GMs, and yeah, he gets along great with them. There's no issue there. He's actually pretty interested in scouting himself, so I felt like he wasn't just there for show. He actually really was watching guys too. But the one thing I'm worried about with this team still is Jacob Chikrin. They're doing this without him, which is great. But at the beginning of the year, they kept saying, hey, he's going to make it. He's going to make it by training camp. Then training camp happened. Then all of a sudden, we didn't hear anything. And then I saw 2 days ago that he was just cleared for contact. But again, that could still be weeks away. Like, until I see him on the ice playing regularly, I'm still going to be a little bit worried about him and his injuries, because they really do need him. They're not going to be able to keep this up without him. But if they get him and play like this, they could be a playoff team.
Yeah, they could be. I agree with that.
And one of the key things for the Coyotes is that, I mean, they just got Galchenyuk back. I mean, he's played 4 games. He's got 4 points. They're not. They have a lot of offensive talent, but it really hasn't come to the forefront yet. I'm looking at their stats right now, and Keller is leading the team with 8 points, 5 goals, and 3 assists. There's more talent than meets the eye. They're doing it with defense, and that's a good thing. But eventually, they're going to need some of these veteran guys that they brought in, like Grabner and Galchenyuk via the trade. They're going to need them to step up and provide some support. It can't be all on the back of Keller and Dylan Strome and the young guys.
Yeah. I'll tell you now, teams-wise, my number 1 team to watch, if it's outside the Metro, because it's just for fun, is Colorado.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
I was just talking about Hamanev just this morning on Stellick and Simmer, and he's starting to come together. They got him in that big trade. So they've done pretty well for themselves trade-wise. If you want to talk about somebody doing well on trades, Kevin, it's Joe Sakic. The returns he's gotten in Girard and Hamanev, and just the production he's getting out of Rantanen and now Varlamov again. He has 2 goalies. They still have Grubauer there. Like, they're a team that probably doesn't get talked about enough, and they're a dangerous, dangerous team. Minnesota, who I believe will win the West still, I watch, and I'm fully invested. And Mike can laugh, but they're winning games. They will get 100 points. They will absolutely get 100 points. And I think this year, the key to them, like I said, is Stahl and Parise. If Stahl and Parise are healthy when the playoffs start, I do really think they can go far, because Granlund's also off to a great start. So they're fun. And then beyond that, I do start watching the East after that.
Yeah, Colorado. Go ahead, Peter.
I was going to say Colorado. I'm turning into a bit of a Nathan McKinnon junkie. Like, that guy, he's just so much fun to watch. And the whole team, and Rantanen and Landeskog, I think they're the best line in the NHL right now.
Hockey, it is.
The other team, and I watch because I'll stay up a little bit, and it's my old stomping grounds, but as Canucks, because Pettersson is something special.
He is.
But despite the fact that, and I delivered it here, I think we all did during the summer for Jim Benning.
I was not giving him.
Okay, I know Mike and I definitely players. Yeah, there's something that's working there, and it's not going to be an incredible team at this point, but something is working there. And they're exceeding expectations quite nicely. So I definitely like to watch them.
And the coach, I don't think Travis Green gets enough credit.
Yeah. Travis Green's a neat guy. I actually really enjoy seeing his press conferences. I like the way he answers questions. I like the way he thinks about stuff and how he talks about things.
He doesn't get enough credit, I'm telling you.
Well, this is
Nashville I like as well. I also, when I can, and it's rare for me, but I like watching the Stars. Mm-hmm. There's something interesting about the Stars that I find sort of really intriguing about them, and that and I think it's going to be really fascinating to see what comes down with the deadline with them and what they do with Jason Spezza if they're in a playoff position and how they address that issue.
I will tell you this: Jim Montgomery putting Spezza and Seguin on the penalty kill, which Mike saw in person. Great move. Their penalty kill just kills you. The minute the puck carrier gets into the offensive zone, they attack them. And if you can get rid of it quickly and get guys set up, they derail that. And they really did hurt the Leafs on the PK. Like, that was something where the Leafs didn't look like they had an answer. The other thing is, I do watch the Leafs too, but I do have a question. Maybe Kevin can answer this. Mike Babcock, I saw him putting gum in his mouth, on the bench. I'm thinking he's like a Wrigley spearmint or a juicy fruit guy, but I'm not sure.
I think it's ice chips he puts in his mouth.
Oh, it's ice chips.
Yeah. That's what he used to do. Unless he's
old Mike Keenan trick.
Yeah, he just loads up on ice chips.
Interesting. So. Okay.
Speaking of Babcock, without turning this into Leaf talk, but an interesting thing came out. Now I don't know who it was in Detroit, Kev, that was asking questions about to Henrik Zetterberg regarding his relationship with Babcock, but there was apparently he was interviewed, and there were some comments about how him and Babcock didn't get along too well. There were times they got along, there were times that they didn't get along. The act got old after a while. It got frustrating for Datsuk and Zetterberg. It's something that's pretty widely known. And Babcock was asked about these comments today. He says, "I remember Z, meaning Zetterberg, being mad a few times. I also remember Zetterberg putting his name on the cup for the rest of his life." So Babcock was justifying his the way he operates by saying that if you follow what's going on, you're going to win. And I was in a scrum yesterday with Roman Polak, the former Leaf, who's now playing with Dallas, and he essentially said the same thing. He says, Babcock is a taskmaster. He expects you to do things. He's not any worse than Ken Hitchcock, or I think Andy Murray was the other guy that Polak said. But what he did say was, he expects you to do something. And for a sort of meat and potatoes guy like Polak, it was easy because the expectations were, get the puck out of the zone, do this, do that. For star players, they have all these offensive talents, and he wants them to be two-way players, and he gets on their cases. So that's where I think Babcock, he gets on the nerves of some of the star players, but in the end, they win. So that's the price you have to pay.
I mean, what I would say about that is it's kind of like the old Scotty Bowman line when he was with the Canadians, where, and I can't remember whether it was Steve Shutt or Larry Robinson, but somebody said we hated Scotty Bowman for 364 days, and on the 365th day, we won a Stanley Cup. Right. It was very similar to that in Detroit. But the difference is they always tried to draw comparisons between Babcock and Scotty Bowman because they were both in Detroit, but their styles were completely different. Scotty Bowman never really communicated with players, and you basically knew how you stood by how he played you. And he's not a guy that would engage you in a conversation and ask you how you felt. One of the issues that Babcock had with the players is that, as Mike knows, he is confrontational with players. And what happened is there was some tension between Franzen and Babcock, and the Swedish players in particular were really taken aback on how Mike handled that with Franz, and they thought he was too public with it, and that sort of caused some friction that lasted for a very long time between the Swedish players. And as everyone knows, there were many of them, on the team, and that included kind of Zetterberg. But Babcock, that's the difficulty is that he's pretty he's like a drill sergeant. Essentially, he's always in your face, always trying to keep you on your toes and always pushing you, and it does kind of grow old. But it's amazing. Like, the Red Wings will complain about how he was, but they always sort of understood that he prepared them better than most coaches are capable of doing. So that's the difference.
One of the things that was brought up in some of the post-game stuff yesterday was, because teams like Calgary and St. Louis and, who were struggling when they came into Toronto, and Dallas, who's been sort of up and down. They're a pretty decent team with a lot of talent, but there's been some ups and downs with them. That there is no game now, even if you're playing Detroit or some of the bottom dwellers in the league, that where you can say, you can just mail it in and you're going to get 2 points. If you look at the NHL standings right now, 31 teams, there are only 7 that are under 500. Every one of them is either a 500 record, and I know that it's a little skewed with the loser point thing, but
A little.
24 teams are either 500 or better. And I think it's the truth. I think you can't say, okay, we're going to play the LA Kings, or the LA Kings or the Detroit Red Wings. Detroit's won 3 in a row. You can't mail in an effort and expect to win in this league anymore.
No,
it's absolutely for sure. And with Detroit, I saw them early, and I thought they were for sure the worst team in the league. Now the veteran defensemen are back, and they're credible. The younger players like Rasmussen has scored 2 goals in 2 games, and the younger players are sort of sorting it out. And meanwhile, guys that have been around the block are keeping the score competitive, and Howard has been good.
Yeah.
So, if he's going to be good, they've got a shot. But, there's just too many holes on that team, and there's too many people trying to, learn to be, to sustain this. But, we look at the teams that we all thought were going to be near the bottom. The Ottawa Senators are better than we expected. The Vancouver Canucks are better than we expected. The Carolina Hurricanes are better than some people thought they're going to be. The Islanders are better than a lot of people thought they were going to be. The bottom has really sort of all risen up.
But we're not even at 20 games yet. It's going to change.
Russ, that's fairly obvious that we're early in the season. But my point is that those teams were all expected to be slow out of the gate and and everything else. But will it even out? Well, for sure.
Well, and that's the thing. I don't think when we were looking at these teams and looking at the beginning of the season, I think in our minds we're saying they're going to be like Colorado bad from a couple of years ago, where they have 48 points. They may be bad, but they may be in the high 60s or low 70s. They may not be completely out of it. It's just they're not as good as the teams that we think are going to make the playoffs.
The difference. GMs say it all the time, but it's just the difference between the playoff teams and the bottom teams are, it just isn't as great as it once was. And, to be honest, I think we like that. If everybody was exactly how they thought they were going to be, it wouldn't be any fun to watch the games,
Sure.
So
I'll say this, there are some teams in some sports that are unwatchable. I don't think there's any team I would deem unwatchable.
Buffalo Bills. Sorry.
No, I mean the NHL.
In the NHL, I think you're right. No, I think you're right. I think you're right about that. I really do. Another thing. So, Peter, who are you watching? Like, what teams interest you?
Colorado for sure, Vancouver, Dallas, and obviously Nashville as well. And I'll take any Central game, but those are my top ones, and hands down Colorado, because I just love what McKinnon does. I'm turning into a McKinnon junkie.
He is definitely entering that level. Like, to me, I feel like like the whole Gretzky the Mew thing when I was a kid, and then below that there was Howard, Chuck, and Yzerman. Right, that's how I always saw things. Back then there was that one level, and then there was that lower level, and now I think there's McDavid and Matthews, and then below that McKinnon, maybe. Like, is McKinnon like up there, or is it we've had this debate many times.
It's that line. It's that entire first line that's in.
Oh yeah.
No. Go ahead, Kevin.
People have been talking about this too, actually, around the league. I'm sure Mike's heard it too. For the longest time, it was twosomes that we were dealing with.
Yeah. And
we now have some lines going where all 3 guys are crucial. That's a little bit different too. So.
And what's crazy is people aren't even really paying attention to how great Malkin and Crosby are playing right now. But the two of them are out of their minds. Malkin has 17 points. Crosby is the hottest player in the last couple weeks of the year. And Pittsburgh's always fun to watch. But
at this point, Malkin's better than Fedorov. He's probably going to go down as the best Russian player when he's done. If he played in a different era, or even just if Sidney Crosby wasn't in this league, we would be talking about him as the best player in the league, possibly.
I say all the time that, if there was a 4-year period when everybody was debating whether it was Ovechkin and Crosby was the better player, they were sort of going back and forth. But I always said there were periods of each season when Malkin was the best player in the league.
Right.
Yeah, just because, he was so, dominant. But I actually have a question that I wanted to pose to everybody. Because I think everyone would enjoy answering this. Who's the one team that you want to see better because you want to watch them?
Yeah,
it's the Oilers. I really want the Oilers to be better because I love watching McDavid. But I need that team to be more competitive, and that's the team I'd love to see get better.
Yeah, well, I want to see him get better because I picked him to win the division. But
for me, it's the Panthers. I mean, I'm on Bob Bugner's case because you can't blame everything 100% on Roberto Luongo being out, because even when he comes back, you don't know that he's not going to go back out. At some point, the coach with the talent, hold on, Mike, with the talent on that team, at some point, the coach has to do something with these players. And right now, they're doing nothing.
Well,
I'm with you, Russ. I had not watched the Panthers until yesterday's game in the Global Series. Look, there's some challenges to goaltending. That's obvious.
Right.
But some of those penalties, my goodness. Yeah. And you give Patrick Laine that many opportunities to reset his team in his home country where half the people in the stands are wearing Laine jerseys.
Yeah.
You want him on that stage, you're going to let him wind up?
Yeah.
Can I blame at least one Panther player, though?
Yeah.
Sure.
I just expect more out of Ekblad.
Yeah.
This year, he had 16 goals last year. And I really thought this season he was going to come roaring out of the gate. And he did get a bunch of shots on goal yesterday. But he has really been almost non-existent.
There. Yeah.
I mean, can we say he hasn't been the same player since before the concussions? I mean,
maybe. Yeah.
No, we can say that. That's true too. That's a part of it.
Let me just say this, Zach. One of the teams I like to watch is Winnipeg because I really think they're an entertaining team, and I was able to watch the game from the media room at Scotiabank yesterday, and Russ, I have to go back to it. There were 2 goals that went through James Reimer like a hot knife through butter. That's what I'm saying. It's like, I mean, you can say, okay, it can't be all
in there who's not the greatest goalie, but he's good enough. He's still getting besieged. Like, their defense isn't doing anything.
No, but they need Luongo to be Luongo for them to have a chance to win.
They need a system that works.
Right.
They need a coach that has to really get on these guys, like Peter said, and not take these penalties. They have a lot of offensive firepower on that team.
Dadonov can skate. I mean, they should be way better than last in the league. Like Reimer had 2 of Laine's goals. I mean, one he probably could have had, but it was a pretty shifty wrister. The slap shot, it was out of the net before Reimer even knew it was in. Like, I mean, it was.
Yeah, they were. I mean, it's hard to pin that on Reimer. I mean, Luongo will calm them down for sure. Hutchinson's been horrible for them. I mean, that's been a really. I mean, he's been really bad. But I think that goaltending to me is when you look at the teams in the bottom of the league, that's what you see, right? You see the goaltending of those teams in the bottom of the league, and I know Kevin's always had the great expression that this sport should be called goalie, but this year it really feels like it because it's just if your goaltending is struggling, you're down low, and. And there are a few exceptions. I mean, the Flyers are sort of in the middle of the pack. They've got the worst save percentage in the league, but they're still in the middle of the pack because they're scoring enough goals. But a lot of teams, and the Kings, watching the Kings Flyers last night, that's a team I want to be better. Like, if I'm going to say, I'm going to go with Kevin, the Kings, like, that just feels wrong to watch how bad they are right now. That is the worst thing. Like, since these have been the Kings, in Kopitar's Kings, let's say, this is by far the worst Kings team. It's not. They look disoriented.
I'll answer to the Kings too. I also want to mention Florida is the lowest scoring team in the East. I want that to sink in for a minute.
Yeah, right. For that kind of firepower they have,
that nothing to do with the goaltending. That's zero to do with goaltending. All right, that Kings game, I can't even say the Flyers are playing better. The Kings are dysfunctional on a 5-on-3, but I'm going to tell you what I saw that I think was dysfunctional. You can't have Jeff Carter and Ilya Kovalchuk on the same side of the ice when they're both shoot-first guys. They don't know what to do. And that was part of the problem on the 5-on-3. It's like, are you shooting? Are you shooting? It's like, and then finally Kovalchuk was just going to shoot, and he's shooting right into guys blocking the puck.
Yeah.
It was really bad. It was
this Flyers road trip has never shown more the concept that my grandmother used to say that dysfunctional families are relative.
Right.
Expression. Because you realize that you think the Flyers look dysfunctional to go to the West. They go into Anaheim and LA, and there's a whole other level of dysfunction going on in those two cities because you can see what's happening with both of those teams.
And the Kings are slogging 5-on-5. They are.
And they've only scored 24. They're averaging 2 goals per game, 24 goals in 12 games.
but their defense is terrible too. You know who really looks disconnected to me more than any other player on the Kings
is Doughty.
It's Doughty. Yeah, Doughty looks terrible, and that's like
good shots on the power play. I'll say that. But
yeah, but he's signed this enormous contract. So he's coming in like this guy he's got to do. I wonder what's going to happen there. It feels as if they really need to change their coach. And I'm sorry about Stevens or whatever, but that team is just not playing. I think
ultimately that's going to happen. I think Blake will try and make a move if he can, but if he can't, he's going to end up changing the coach. But again, that's a team where you look at the personnel and you say, there still has to be more than a coaching change there because the personnel is just not up to what this league is. It's not a matter of talent. It's a matter of how they play, how they attack the game.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, they should be.
The Kings' strength, which was always that Kings team that won the Stanley Cup, was better at getting the puck out of their own end in transition than anybody, right? And that's been their strength forever. And they are horrible at it right now. They have no. I remember watching the Kings in those Stanley Cup Finals games, saying, "Man, they just have it together." The guy gets behind the puck, behind the net, two guys on the board, with that outlet here, that outlet there, he's gonna move it, and they're and they're and nope, it's
they suffer from the Kings do. A malady that is in all of sports. It affects all sports, and that is you fall in love with all your players, and you don't change enough of them up after you've won, and they all end up with unbelievable contracts, and then they get older and they're not performing at the same level, and they probably obviously stuck with this group too long, and with Doughty and Kopitar and Quick. Even in a speed game with a team that's not so fast, you would think they would be better than they are. But obviously, Quick is hurt, and Kopitar is off to a slow start. And I think Eck was right on the money when he said Doughty just doesn't. He just looks to be out of sync. So
and Kopitar wasn't even winning crease battles. Sorry.
And I don't know how Rob Blake gets out of it. Say we were talking about this a couple days ago, Kev. You look at the Kings and say this goes on for another month and they're way out of it, and it's time to they go through the mindset of, okay, well, we can change the coach and they can do that, but if their mindset is to reset or rebuild or do something, they can't really do it because they've got all these veteran guys on long-term contracts like Brown and Kopitar and Carter and Kovalchuk and the four guys. And I think they can move a Martinez or a Muzzin, but they're young enough and they're good. So why would you want to? I mean, where do they go? How do they do that reset?
Well, I think the way to do it is you're committed to Doughty and Kopitar. And there's nothing wrong with that. Those are exceptional players. Sure. And Quick is still a great goalie, but he's got to stay healthy. So I think you got to work, around the edges. I mean, what added to the when the Penguins won, it's, adding, Sherry, Russ, all the extra guys that kind of make the team, faster. And, I've had this conversation, and I was kind of working on a story where it only takes 2 or 3 guys with great speed to sort of change the speed of your team. And I think that's probably what they're going to have to do. I mean, they're committed, as you said, to a lot of these guys, but they're going to have to find a way, to move out, the Tanner Pearsons and just the secondary group and replace them with fresher, younger legs.
I think that's the key too. And then that group that was so why they were winning Stanley Cups were their great third and fourth lines. Those guys aren't great for them anymore, and they're still there. A lot of them, and there is definitely, talking to Kings fans, like lifer King fans, they are, they're like pining for Dean Lombardi to come back. Like they have this feeling like,
the answer. It's not.
And I'm not, and I love Rob Blake is one of the most interesting people and one of the best people in the sport, right? So I'm not ripping on him, but he does have a stigma among Kings fans of a time when the Kings weren't very good, with Rob Blake, and there's a feeling like this is a return to those King teams. I've gotten that from a couple of my friends out there who are just like, yeah, when we had Blake and Robitaille, those teams were really bad, and
yeah, they really sucked in '93, didn't they?
Yeah.
Well, they obviously they got the great one, right? But there were other teams before that. There were some teams in there that were.
Here's what I think's killing him too, Eck. And this started last year with injuries. In his last 39 games, Jeff Carter has 29 points.
Yeah.
He may not be the same player anymore, and they got him at 3 more years at 5.2, and it just reminds me of Rick Nash when I'm watching him play. It does.
Yeah, and that's a great comparison because I remember even in Jeff Carter in his whole career, I remember talking about him in Philly. He there were two different Jeff Carters. You used to say this in the press box. You've heard me say this 1,000 times, Russ. Where there's the Jeff Carter that plays like Matt Sundin used to play, like where you're going to the net, crashing the net, taking great shots, really attacking. And then there's the Jeff Carter that plays like Rick Nash as like a perimeter player on the outside. And that Rick Nash, Jeff Carter is just horrible for what you're paying. And not horrible, but you just don't want that. That's not what you get from him. And if he's not going at the net, like the goal he scored last night, that was a real Jeff Carter type goal. That was actually a really good goal because he went to the net, he made a little move, and he's got quick hands, and he did all that stuff. But
he had 3 goals on the season, though.
Yeah, but moving up north to Vancouver for a second, there's another team that I think that we have to touch base with for a second because Vancouver is playing so well, and they are playing with so many injuries. But let's admit that Elias Pettersson comes back, and he is just he doesn't skip a beat. He's
one of the best players in the league. I've been saying it all year.
It's astonishing that usually when a rookie gets hit with a hit like that, he's a little hesitant to go behind the net or make plays. Not this kid. This kid.
Peter, I don't know what two Chicago Blackhawk players were. They were on the replay that I saw, but he made a move at center ice on 2 Hawks in the recent game, and they both broke their ankles. I mean, it was essentially he deked them out going into the offensive zone, and they both sort of just lost their footing and fell down because it was such a quick move. I mean, he's really slick.
Yes. He's deadly good in a lot of ways. And
he's got to be rookie of the year.
Teams are figuring them out. They always do. You players, what you get away with right now, you may not get away with in February or March. They will adjust. The scouting will get better on them. Players will learn. But this is a kid who is apparently undersized. All the things we say shouldn't work. Yet his skill and vision is ridiculous, and he's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah, last year, middle of the season, I was talking to Shel Samuelson in Philly, and we talked for about a half hour about Elias Pettersson. And it was just, we're probably the only 2 guys in the rink that would even talk about him. And he was saying that what he was seeing over there was just super great. He couldn't stop, raving about how ready he thought that he was, and so now you fast forwarded to now. So it's not really a shock. The thing that will be hard to do as far as shutting him down is he's not a pass first guy and he's not a shoot first guy.
I know.
So it's going to be hard. He's one of those guys that will decoy you too. So he is a great passer. So if they do start to just think, let's just attack him while he's got the puck, he doesn't hold on to the puck for very long.
That's the mistake that people made when Forsberg first came in the league, right? And then they learned you can't. So then Forsberg got all kinds of
Forsberg in him, in some of his stick moves and everything else. But I don't even think Forsberg had this kind of shot.
No.
I mean, just a deadly shot where you can get top shelf, short side all the time.
Really, of all the players he reminds me of, and because I'd be interested in your thought, Kevin, on this one, because at first I was thinking, somebody told me that he was a Zetterberg, and I don't really see that too much. I see him much more as actually Datsuk, like he really does remind me of Datsuk in the way he slows the game down.
Yeah, he's definitely not Zetterberg. I mean, Zetterberg has never been a skater.
Yeah.
He's a little bit of everything. He protects the puck like Forsberg, but he's got some magic in his game. He's got some Naslund in him. He's got he's every Swedish. I mean, I'm going to be stereotypical here, and I hate it when I do this, but the Swedes are always so good at protecting the puck. Like it's almost like that's what they teach Swedish hockey, because they come in and he does that well. He's got some dazzle. He's definitely the best rookie that they've seen since Bure. I mean, he's that dynamic.
Yeah. Anybody know what his shooting percentage is this year?
I'll check.
I know. It's 36.8.
Oh my god.
To me,
he doesn't waste his shots.
No.
Sure.
No.
I wonder if that thing, Kevin, has anything to do with these kids in Sweden all playing so much soccer. Like it feels.
That's a good theory.
Because there's a similar thing. They're all really good with their feet. They're all very good with their feet, Swedes too. Like as far as kicking the puck from their skate to their stick, they're incredible at that. Plus, protecting the ball or protecting the puck is a big thing in soccer, right?
Yeah. Well, the two best I've ever seen in the NHL. It'd be interesting to get Russ's thoughts. But Forsberg and Zetterberg were the two best I saw at protecting the puck.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody better. I mean, those guys were.
They were incredible.
Yeah.
Forsberg was otherworldly at that skill, and
Forsberg's the best. He was incredible.
Sure though. I mean,
he had problems. He would be as good as Lemieux, but he had the foot problem, and that was the thing about Forsberg that just sort of derailed him. So last year, just to give you an idea, that year with Pedersen, and what was he, 18 then? At 18, playing against men, he had 24 goals in 44 games and 56 points.
Yeah.
That's like a 150-point season or whatever it would be in the NHL.
Yeah.
The other thing about Forsberg, where he was among the Swedish leaders, was in personality. I loved Forsberg's personality. He was a little, kind of chippy, yet he was cooperative, like all Swedes. Like sense
of humor. He was funny. Yeah.
And he's almost the exact opposite of Matt Sundin, who was a really good guy and really liked in the locker room, but was not sort of a bully. Yeah, he's sort of bland, and that's why. I
mean, he's very vanilla. Sundin was bland, vanilla, and to be honest, most of the Swedes are. Like I was very friendly with Nicholas Lidstrom, and he ranks among my all-time top favorite players. He was very helpful to me, but was not a great quote ever. And he's capable. He was a very bright, creative guy, but that's just. I
never had a chance to cover Tomas Sandstrom. I imagine he might have been a good quote.
He was terrific. Yeah, he was one of the all-time, greats. But he was very North American, and
he was.
Yeah, and after the interview, he would have slashed you on the wrist.
Yeah. Well, the best Swedish quote of all time was Ulfie.
Yeah.
Ulfie Samuelsson was. Yeah. Just fantastic as a quote.
I remember the first time I met Forsberg face to face, actually as in person. I was taken by the fact that he looked like if I held a hockey stick up, he could bite through it with his jaw. Like there was something about his face.
I want to tell you something about him. That's one of my favorite little, just kind of stories that Pierre Lacroix told me, and Gordie Howe played at the same 203 pounds. 6 foot his entire career. But, obviously he played at a time when the average height and weight was 5'10", 175. So right. Glenn Howe always used to say that Gordie seemed 6'8". But anyway, Gordie Howe played within 3 pounds his entire career of that 203. It's exactly the playing weight, and he's exactly the same size that Peter Forsberg was. Gordie Howe and Peter Forsberg played in the NHL at exactly the same height and weight.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, that is a crazy thing.
Yeah. I mean, and Gordie seems so much bigger, obviously.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Comparatively, Pedersen will put up Forsberg numbers for this era.
No,
I think so too. And I just love watching the guy play. I mean, Forsberg also had he was the king of Sweden, he was beyond everything else. Like the Crocs thing, which he barely made more money on Crocs than he made in the NHL. Someone said that the other day. I heard that. He made more money endorsing Crocs.
Well, Salming made more money on underwear, didn't he? He
did it for a long time. That guy stayed in shape for so long.
So Salming and Bjorn Borg made more money on undergarments than they did in their professional career.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I was also told that Forsberg, despite making all this money, his dad was a big financial guy. I was told that Forsberg lived on an incredibly small budget, just ridiculous. Put himself on a $200,000 a year salary or whatever. Which is a lot of money for people. But when you're making $8 million or whatever,
Well, I'm going to give you a name of a guy who was incredibly frugal with his money that will shock you.
Okay.
And I know this because I did a book with him, and that's Brett Hull. Brett Hull was a very frugal man. He still has in an investment in an account somewhere the original $150,000 that he got as a signing bonus.
Wow.
His stepfather was a financial manager, and he put it all in. He didn't buy a car, didn't he? He put everything he got on his bonus.
Wow.
Because like in $1 million annuity or whatever it was back then.
Right.
That's great.
He's very frugal. He's very careful with his money.
Kevin, I have a friend of mine. He's a business associate who worked with a lot of AHL players doing that, and he talked them into, particularly people out of Manitoba when the Moose are here, and working with their signing bonuses. 3 of these guys later became my clients. All 3 of them owned multiple homes, rented them out, great real estate investments, and were set. And they all credit the idea that someone told me what to do with my signing bonus.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
We do have breaking news.
Yeah. I got a couple things here. First of all, the Tampa Bay Lightning have extended Yanni Gourde 6 years at $5.166 million. Again, we were talking about this a couple days.
5.1?
5.16 per. Now, we were talking about this a couple days ago, Kev. Braden Point is going to hit the mother load next year on a deal. I don't think it's going to be the bridge thing. I mean, it's going to have to be. I mean, he's had 3 great years coming, as a rookie, and then this year and last year as well. He's going to probably make $6.5, $7 million on a new contract. I mean, there's going to have to be a lot of changeover.
Well, I think Coburn comes off the books. I think Gerard Cheap comes off the books, but I think they're going to have to trade Tyler Johnson. I just don't see how they're going to be able to keep all these forwards. So I think by signing Gourde now, Tyler Johnson's going to be expendable in the offseason.
Well, I think they are going to trade Tyler Johnson. I agree with you on that. But one thing we all need to keep in mind, and I always send it to my readers. I mean, to just do the math, divide 23 players by where we are in the salary cap.
Right.
We're all still sort of looking at the cap as if it was 5-6 years ago. It's crept up to the point where $5 million is not a outrageous amount of money. I mean, I tend to think as reporters, and I'm guilty of this too, we tend to look at what we've sort of not grown up with, but what we've been writing about for 4 or 5 years. So that money isn't really that much anymore.
No, but of course, morphing into the territory where we'll have to take a drink. When you have a team like Toronto that they're paying Tavares $11 million, they're going to probably pay Matthews anywhere close to that, or maybe even more. And Marner's probably going to get close, in the 8 to 9 range. That's where the whole thing with William Nylander. They're trying to get him signed under 7, and him and his representatives want 8, 8.5. There's a certain amount of players that you can pay the big money to, and then afterward, you just got to say, we can't do this. And I'm still getting the impression, being in Toronto as much as I am, Kev, is that the Rubicon was passed last week after Dubas went to Switzerland and talked to Louis Gross in New York, and there was from every indication out there, everybody out there was saying, there's a stalemate, there's an impasse, there's no progress whatsoever. And then Dubas goes on this grand tour of like 4 or 5 different NHL cities, which is unusual for late October. So, I mean, and then yesterday, as I tweeted out, Rick Dudley was at the Scotiabank Arena for the 4th time in 2 weeks, and 3 Carolina scouts were there. I mean, there's so much circumstantial evidence and so much smoke out there that Nylander, maybe he's not being shopped, but that teams are preparing for the potential of him being traded, that you can't ignore it anymore.
Yeah, I think it's the same as like a Sears store going out of business. I was at Sears today. I'll be back tonight.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think they are really exploring trades, and I think the Carolina Hurricanes are a good option. They've got a lot of good young defensemen, and I think not only are they trying to get a top 4 defenseman, but I pretty much know this to be the case. What they're really looking for is some cost certainty with that player. Yeah. Just because they need to be amazing. But I am going to repeat what I said the other day. I sure hope that Kyle Dubas has less angst and feels less pressure about it than you do on this.
I love trade. That's the thing, Kev. I love trades.
I want to go back to the Lightning though, because here's their cap. Next year, they're right now they look to be about 74, and they have to sign Point. The year after, they have to sign Vasilevsky and Sergachev.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, they're definitely going to trade Johnson. I don't think
They
so.
have to. They have to. I mean, I want to touch one thing before we get out of here because it's really interesting. I think that, and we have not much time left. There's so many things on my topic here. You got if you go see the save that Pekka Rinne made on point last night, if you can find it, that was ridiculous. Like one of the saves of the year. Pekka Rinne in that game was like, how old is Pekka Rinne? He looked ridiculously good last night against Tampa. But what the NHL, like to your point, Mike, about trades, the NHL just doesn't have like the mojo the other leagues have in trades. Like I'm here in Philly, Kevin, you're in Detroit. The Eagles and Lions make this trade this week, right? Where they get
Golden
Tate, yeah.
Who is I'm not a football guy as much, but I know who he is. He's a very good receiver, right? He's
a yards per catch guy. You know, he gets he gets a lot of yards after the catch. He was very exciting. Yeah. Right, a very exciting player. They get him for a 3rd round draft. This is like to me the equivalent of getting like a top 3 forward for a 3rd round draft pick, right? So like why is it? Well, 3rd round picks in the NFL, they'll start for you. You know what I mean? Like
I guess so. Yeah, I guess that's what I mean.
That's the
and Kevin can tell you that the gulf that has been passed in the NFL in the last couple of years in terms of trades. Their trade deadline was a snooze fest.
Yeah.
Up until a couple of years ago, and now all of a sudden teams, now they've loosened up.
Well, I think the NHL's trade deadline is the best. You know, no other sport has it quite the way we do, where there's a lot of excitement on trade deadline. Even on days when we don't get a lot, it's still fun because
baseball's the worst now. Baseball used to be the best. It used to be the best when I was a kid. Baseball's trading deadline was the best. Now it's the worst because there's so many guys making too big of money that a lot of times trades can't happen. The NFL, they're happening because teams just want out of guys' contracts. They literally just get rid of them to get rid of them.
That is the thing. And that's the thing because, like, to me, like, okay, if you're trying to everybody always says you need a top 6 forward going to trade deadline, or we want a top pairing defenseman, or whatever. You always says, and you can't do that. You can't do it. There's no way. If the Eagles want a top receiver, they can go get him for a 3rd round pick.
Well, but this is the misnomer though about the NFL trade deadline, right? Yeah. Teams do it because they just want to out of guys' contracts, and then the team that gets the guy acts as if, oh look, we stole him for a 3rd rounder. Like, but at least with the NHL, you get decent trades. I mean, a lot of times these guys will go to other teams in the NFL. Like, the guy the Eagles got, Golden Tate. He's a nice receiver, right? He is not a game breaker. I've watched him his whole career. He gets hurt in a game, then all of a sudden you're looking at him like, oh, wow, we just gave up a 3rd round pick for him. Like, so teams, when they're willing to give up guys, they're willing to give up on them for a reason a lot of times.
Because their contract is expiring. So, or whatever. I mean, that's
they're on the other side.
People are torn in Detroit over that trade. Like most people were against it because it's waving the white flag because, he's a very consistent performer. Like he's not a superstar. But what he really is good at is catching the pass, and if he catches it 3 yards out, he can turn it into a 12-yard gain. He's very slippery and elusive.
Yards out.
But they've run sort of the reporters have done like who the Lions have gotten in 3rd round picks, and they're all guys who come in and start. So they're everybody says you've traded them for a starter. So.
And the opposite end of the spectrum, Kev, is that Buffalo had Kelvin Benjamin and LaShawn McCoy and a couple other players who fans were hoping that they would trade before the deadline because the Bills are going to go 2-14 or 3-13 with them. So what the hell's the difference?
Right? Yeah. No,
that's fair.
It's a very good point. That's all the time we have today, guys. Remember, without the buzz, it's just football. And we will talk to you on Monday. Have a great weekend.